first ingredient needed to make changes in life is courage. So what is courage? Well, here's the definition for courage. Courage means the ability to take action despite of fear. So we often use the word courage with armed forces. We use the courage with first responders. We use courage with the men and women of the military, right? And why is that? Because they have to go suit up and show up and take certain actions and take steps despite of fear, despite of the risk of their life, right? It's life and death. And that's why we attribute courage to that. Now, when we want to make changes in our life, sometimes there's not a risk of life and death. Sometimes there is, by the way. Some of you know you need to make certain changes in your life because if you don't, there's a life and death price tag on that, especially with addiction. All the individuals using the opiates and the fentanyls, you know that if you do not change your addiction to these substances and seek out recovery, there is a life and death to it. But with everyone else that wants to change something with their job, their health, their relationships, with their overall outlook on life, sometimes the life and death thing isn't so measured and so specific, but it still needs courage. Why? Because anytime we do anything in life that goes against our norm, there is fear associated to that. We call it the fear of unknown. We call it the fear of uncertainty, doubt. And we get paralyzed and crippled by that fear to the point that people don't take actions because they're terrified by the outcome of it, right? So if you're trying to make changes in your life, let's say someone wants to go back to school for the first time in years and years and years, and they're scared to do so. Well, the day you sign up for your classes and the day you show up to your first class is an act of courage because you took action despite of fear. Let's say somebody wants to get out of a relationship or leave a job, and the only reason they're staying on to it is because of X, Y, and Z, right? Just certain things, and it's all based out of fear. The day they leave that job or leave that relationship, it takes an act of courage because they're taking action despite of fear. Now, we have a lot of loved ones, of your loved ones, that are in our program, that some of them as young as 18, 19 years old, they got on an airplane, right? They flew across the country, or they flew from the Pacific Northwest down to Orange County to treat their mental health addiction, to find recovery. Getting on that airplane for you as a family member and for them is an act of courage because you took action despite of fear, right? So the first ingredient necessary to make any change in life is courage. Now the next one is commitment. So we're focused on the C of change right now. We have courage and now we have commitment. So as a society as a whole, we've watered down this word commitment so much. This commitment has just lost its power. It's lost its meaning, because people say they're committed to something or someone, and as soon as things get difficult, they go the other way. My question to them is, what happened to the commitment? People say they're committed to sobriety. 30, 60, 90 days later, they're back using again. What happened to the commitment? Family members say they're committed to setting boundaries and making a stand in the recovery process. As soon as the loved one makes a phone call, or as soon as they need some money, they let it right back in the house, or they open up their bank account back up to them. What happened to the commitment? People say they want to go to school, right? This is I always talk about this, but I'll continue to talk about it. The community college system in Southern California is packed with students. I mean, when there's no COVID going on and people actually go to classes, if you go to Orange Coast Community College, if you go to Saddleback Community College, if you go to Golden West Community College, the first few days, in the first few weeks, in the first few months of school, there is no parking. It is impossible to just go there and park and go to class. You have to go find a parking lot somewhere far away and walk for 30 minutes to get to class. By the time the 4th week comes around, and the 6th week comes around, and the 8th week comes around, you can kind of just go pull up to the parking lot a few minutes before class and kind of find parking. By the time the 12th week comes around, the 14th week comes around, you can pull up a few minutes before class and go right to class and just park right in front of the classroom door. And by the time week 16 comes around, it's just you and two other students and the teacher taking the final exam. So the question is, what happened to the commitment? So what is commitment? The ingredient of commitment is this, is the motivation and the willingness to continue taking action after the initial excitement and enthusiasm has worn off. So anybody can start something. How many people have started things but haven't finished them? How many people can get the motivation to get sober when their back's against the wall, when their mom and dad are giving them ultimatums, when the courts and the judges and the judicial system saying, if you don't go to treatment, you're going to go behind bars? Man, that's easy. That's easy to find that motivation. But the willingness to continue taking actions after the initial excitement and enthusiasm has worn off, now that's commitment. And that's the second ingredient needed to make changes. The first one's courage, the second one's commitment. Now the third one is compassion. So this goes a little bit counterintuitive to what I was talking about, but compassion, oh man almighty, is this one important. Why is that? Because we as human beings are often our own worst enemies. We are our own worst critics. We are so hard on ourselves. I've encountered so many people that they want to make changes in life, and as soon as they hit a couple roadblocks, they hit a couple barriers, their progress kind of gets impeded. Instead of wondering what's going on, they look at themselves and they blame themselves. They get upset at themselves. They get frustrated at themselves. And in that moment, they get discouraged. And they change course and go back to what's familiar and what's comfortable. Because at least in that world, they know what to expect. So this whole thing of self-compassion is a very important ingredient needed when you're trying to make changes. Because if making changes was easy, if you were able to already make those changes, you would have already had the outcome that you're looking for. Therefore, there will be challenges in the road. There will be barriers that you need to overcome. And when you hit them, and when you have a hard time with moving them, removing them, overcoming them, climbing over them, you have to have some compassion to yourself, right? Oftentimes, we as human beings, we can go give compassion to another person. We can give compassion to an animal, to a child. But when it comes to ourselves, we are so hard on ourselves. We have this bar set up here that no matter what we do, we never reach it, right? And I'm not saying bring the bar down. Keep the bar up. But when you're reaching for it, just keep reaching and reaching and reaching. Eventually, you'll have the psychological, emotional, physical strength to grab what it is you want. But it might not come at first. Can't get discouraged. So the third ingredient is to have definitive amounts of compassion for yourself. Okay, so in summary, the C was courage, taking action despite of fear. It was commitment, the willingness and motivation to continue taking action after the initial excitement and enthusiasm has worn off. And it was compassion, being our own worst enemy, right? And being hard on ourselves. And sometimes it just, the act of self-love it could be enough to help us get over an obstacle, barrier. So the next, we're going into the H of change. And the first element of the H is the word honesty, right? In the program, we have something called To Thine Own Self Be True. And what honesty in this terms really stands for is, thanks, Nick. I appreciate you watching, man. I love compassion too. Shout out to you. You are one of the biggest gifts and transformative stories that I've come across in my recovery, and the work that you're doing for the recovery community these days is wonderful. Myself and so many are proud of the man you've become, and I'm grateful to call you my friend, man. So thank you for joining us. But the H we're talking about right now is honesty. And what is honesty? To thine own self be true. In the process of making change in life, there will be days that you will feel angry. There will be days that you will feel frustrated. You will be days that you feel overwhelmed. There will be days that you feel sad. There will be days that you feel discouraged, right? When you feel those emotions and someone asks you, how are you doing today? And you say, oh, I'm doing fine. That right there goes against the formula necessary to make changes in life. That right there goes against it. And what I mean by that is you have to own what you're experiencing internally to the external world. You have to own it. When the insides and outsides match is when we are actually at our strongest point. When we own that we're feeling angry, we're feeling frustrated, we're feeling discouraged, we're feeling sad, and we share that with other people, is when we're in our most power. But when we deny it, minimize it, just shove it under the rug, act like it doesn't exist, that is when we struggle as human beings. So if you're trying to make changes in life, you have to be able to be honest. And where does that start? With yourself. Go look at yourself in the mirror and acknowledge what's so, acknowledge what's there, acknowledge what you see, what you feel. Own up to it. Sit with it, right? And when someone asks you how you're doing today, don't just say fine when you know you're not fine. Tell them, man, I'm really struggling today. I'm really having a hard time today. This is tougher than I thought it was. I'm pissed off today, right? And that's one of the most important necessary ingredients for it. So, what's going on, Steven? Steven or Stefan? Either way, man, thank you for joining. Appreciate you being here. And the next one that we have right here, it goes into this thing called help. So the next ingredient for making changes in life is learning how to ask for help. Now, for whatever reason, human beings, we feel that asking for help is a sign of weakness. When I'm here to tell you this, as someone with a marriage and family therapy degree, a master's in marriage and family therapy, as a licensed advanced alcohol and drug counselor, as someone that's in the recovery program for myself, since June 13th, 2008, asking for help is not a sign of weakness, it is a sign of strength. Anybody who has ever accomplished anything in life has done it with the assistance, support, and help of other human beings. You don't believe me? Go ask. Go ask someone that's successful how you became the person you became. They will all have one thing in common, that they will acknowledge somebody who helped them. So if you're going through the recovery process right now, if you're a family member that's lost, you're scared, if you're an addict alcoholic who's really afraid of the next steps, you're not going to be able to do this on your own. I promise you that. You will be able to do this if you ask for help. And more importantly, if you're honest with yourself and receive that help. So, and I sound like a hypocrite sometimes here because I don't ask for help too often. Sometimes I'm guilty of it. I'm that kind of guy that if you ask me to help you move or something like that, I'll be at your house. We'll get a moving truck. We'll move up and down and do all this kind of stuff. And I'll set some time aside for you. But when it's my turn to move, my first reaction is I'm going to put the refrigerator on my back and I'm going to lift the couch up 3 flights of stairs on my own. And I got this and I'm not going to ask anyone. And you know what that comes down to? It comes down to pride. It comes down to ego. None of those things are helpful when you're trying to change, right? Pride and ego keep people stuck. I know when I wanted to get clean and sober, when I got clean and sober, it was the help of other human beings that helped me get there, right? It was asking for help. It was accepting help. It was putting myself out there. It was being a part of a bigger system, if you will. So you have to learn how to ask for help. If you're trying to change something, like if you're struggling with your weight, or you're struggling with your mental health, and you're struggling with your addiction, your recovery, and you're trying to do it on your own and you're wondering why you're unable to, well, if you had the answers already, you would have been able to find the solutions, right? And maybe asking for help allows you to overcome some barriers. So, and the last H for change is humility. Now, this one's really big for addicts, alcoholics, and this one's really big for family members who are trying to change their recovery process and their addiction to the recovery process. Because when we get 30, 60, 90 days clean and sober, first of all, it always does need to get celebrated and accomplished because it is a big deal. So let me come out by saying that first. But sometimes, especially with addicts, alcoholics, when they get 30, 60, 90 days sober, they feel like they figured it out. They feel like they got this thing. They feel like they don't need any more help. They feel like they know what to do, right? And I'm saying that's a dangerous place to be. It teeters on the line of being cocky, right? It's that lack of humility, because not too long ago, you rewind the tape and remember where you came from, right? I learned this lesson, by the way, in a really, really strong way. I've shared this so many times, but I'm going to share it again. I remember being in a treatment program back in 2008, and I had one of those passes. There was like a strict curfew, but there was a pass to get out and go a little bit later than the typical time of going back home for curfew. And I remember my mom called me at I was supposed to be back at 12 o'clock, and my mom called me at 11:55 to see if I was going to be home on time and if I was okay. And I remember getting pissed off and frustrated at her, angry at her. And the next day I go to I go to rehab, and the counselor was, I was sharing this story with the group members, and everyone was kind of, backing me up, saying, yeah, you did the right thing. You came back before curfew. You're clean and sober. Good on you. Keep it up. And the counselor just looked at me, and his name is Siamak Afshar. I always love giving him credit. But he said, who the F do you think you are? Who do you think you are? Just because you're 30 days sober right now, as soon as mom calls and she's upset or she's scared that you're not going to be home sober, you get pissed off at her, you react to her, right? And because I told her, hey, I'm pissing in a cup twice a week, I'm going to these groups, I'm clean and sober, what else do you want from me? Get off my back, I'm a grown man. And mind you, I was 25 years old, no job, no education, no money, no life, no nothing. But I said I had my life figured out. And he said, who do you think created that fear in that woman? Who do you think created that fear, the sleepless nights, not knowing if you were going to come home, saying you were going to be home but not showing up, not showing up intoxicated, under the influence, throwing up, angry, violent, loud, crying, all that kind of stuff. He said, for years and years and years, you chipped away and created this masterpiece, like this little statue that you call your mom. You chipped it away. And now you're looking at the end result and you say, I don't like what I see. I'm 30 days clean and sober. Can't you see I'm good now? And that taught me a lesson in humility. It taught me something, that I can celebrate my recovery and sobriety. I can celebrate my change and transformation, but I never should forget where I came from, because there's valuable gifts in that starting point. So if you're trying to change something in your life and you're making some progress and you're moving forward and you're feeling good about yourself, celebrate it, enjoy it, own it, but don't forget that we're always a few steps, a few poor decisions away from where we started from. And it's always healthy to have that healthy level of respect to our starting point. So that's the humility that I'm talking about that's needed in making changes. Now, the next one is the A of change, right? So the A of change, and there's a few of them here. So the first one is accountability. Now, accountability is really important because there's research, real research out there that talks about the power of having an accountability partner, for example, for exercise routines. Now, if you start an exercise routine on your own, with all the commitment and all that kind of stuff, the motivation to do the exercise routine, and if versus someone who starts it with an accountability partner with a set kind of defined schedule, research shows that 85% of people complete their exercise workout regimen with the accountability partner versus without. 85% more. I mean, I'm not a betting man, and I usually don't put money on anything, but if someone was starting a workout routine with an accountability partner versus without one, I'll probably bet on the one that does with it. And it's the same thing in the program. We talk about sponsorship all the time. I believe in sponsorship. I know the value of it. And because that person provides one layer of accountability, we are accountable to someone outside of ourselves. The same thing happens in family recovery, by the way. As a family member, when you establish a recovery support group that you are accountable to, it's kind of like having that accountability partner going to the gym. You're going through the recovery process with other people. The likelihood of that person succeeding versus going through it by yourself is probably, I don't know the statistics, I'm assuming it's the same thing. So we always want to be accountable to something or someone. Nothing good happens in the dark. Nothing good happens underground. Nothing good happens away from the sight of other human beings. Sometimes it's okay to isolate and recharge our batteries, but if you're going through negative emotions, if you're going through fear, if you're going through discomfort and you're doing it on your own, good luck, because guess what you're going to do? As soon as it gets too difficult, you're going to make a U-turn and go back to what's familiar and comfortable to you, which is exactly the same life you're trying to change from. So accountability is very important in the change process. If you look back at your previous attempts of change, I have a feeling that you'll be able to identify when you did not have accountability in your life, you reverted back to comfort. You went back to familiarity. You took the path that was familiar to you. And with accountability, you're willing to take more risks. You're willing to put yourself out there. You're willing to do things you otherwise wouldn't have done because you feel supported. Now, the next A of change is adaptability. Now, what has 2020 taught us? Oh my gosh, if you have not learned the importance of being adaptable in 2020, you miss the entire lesson plan. So whether you agree or disagree with what's going on or how it's happened, if you have not learned how to be adaptable in the face of change, when you have a goal, a plan in place for 2020, and all of a sudden the plan completely derails itself and you have to go on a detour, and you have not learned how to be adaptable to adjust to those differences, then you really miss the lesson. I've shared many times with you in the past year about something I learned from John Maxwell, and he talks about the Detour Tour. I'm going to tell you what it is right now because there's a few extra people watching that have never heard me say this. The Detour Tour is powerful. So if you've ever driven in a car on the freeway at nighttime, let's say you're in Los Angeles and you're driving from downtown Los Angeles to Orange County, we've all been there. There's many times in the middle of the night, the freeway, the lights are flashing and the road's turning into one lane and it forces you off a detour, right? And you're like, oh man, I just want to get home. I don't know what this detour is. And you go on this detour. And what do people do on detours? They try as hard as possible, as much as humanly possible, to get right back on the main road of what's familiar to them, right? So if you use that analogy, 2020 has forced us to go on a detour, right? And what people want to do is they want to go back to the same normal. They want to go back to what's familiar, what's comfortable to them. However, take the detour tour. So when you're on the detour, you will see things you otherwise wouldn't have seen. You'd hear things that you otherwise wouldn't have heard. You'd feel things you otherwise wouldn't have felt. You experience things you otherwise wouldn't have experienced because of the detour. So take the detour tour, and that's a byproduct of being adaptable. Because maybe you'll find a different way of doing things that the regular route was not allowing you to do. And when you want to make changes in life, so let's say you have a specific idea of what you want to change, and life just throws something at you, throws a curveball at you. Something that's unpredictable happens. Can you adapt in that moment and stay course? Because what people do is they get so distracted that they go back to what's familiar and what's comfortable, and they miss the opportunity to change. And the last A for change is the word acceptance. This is the most powerful tool in any human being's toolbox. Okay? Most people resist life as it comes to them. Most people resist it. They want life to appear a different way. They want themselves to be a different way. They want their partner, their spouse to be a different way. They want their job to be something different. Their expectations of what would make them happy is different than what they're actually experiencing. Acceptance is this, is you have to learn how to accept yourself for who and what you currently are in this moment. You have to learn to accept your life for what it is in this moment. You have to accept other people for who they are and who they're not, exactly as they are in this moment. And the more you accept the moments of life that come to you, right, the more you have power to make changes. I know that sounds counterintuitive to what I just said right now, but if you're trying to make changes in life, you have to accept the present moment. The more you resist the present moment, the more you're unable to grasp hold of it to make the changes necessary. If you didn't catch what I said there, rewind it and watch that again. The more you resist the present moment, the more you're going to be unable to make the changes you want in life. It all starts with acceptance. The program, Alcoholics Anonymous, teaches us acceptance is the answer to all of my problems today, right? All of my problems today. And it's a powerful lesson. I'm telling you, it's needed in change because some people say, well, why do I have to accept my body the way it is? Why do I have to accept my spouse the way it is? Why do I have to accept my bank account the way it is, my addiction the way it is, you know? Because without accepting it, you won't have the ability to change it. Without accepting it, you won't have the ability to change it. And the N, so far we've gone through C, we've gone through H, we've gone through A, now we're on the N of change, and this one's simple. I purposely made it simple. I made it only one thing because this one thing is so important that I want you to focus on it, learn it. The N of change is the word no. You have to master the art of saying no. You have to learn the power that exists within the word no. I'll tell you this, that no is a complete sentence. When you use the word no, you don't have to justify it. You don't have to explain it. You don't have to rationalize it. It could just be standalone by itself. So any family member watching this, your loved one tells you, hey, I want a little bit of money for this classroom. I want this money for this spending money, or I want, this gas money here. If you are in that place of your recovery that you need to be setting boundaries, if you say no to them, it's a complete sentence. Now, there are a lot of people that have a hard time saying no. Because why? Because we're always worried about what other people think. We're worried about people pleasing. We're worried about looking good. We're worried about how we will come off to other people. There are so many people that say yes when people make requests to them, and as soon as the person leaves, they say, why did I do that? Oh my God, I got so many things to do. I can't believe I just made that commitment. Because if they would have said no, they would have thought the other person's going to not like them. The other person's going to judge them. The other person's going to think a certain thing about them. When eventually, if you're trying to make changes in life, you have to learn how to say no to people, places, things. You have to learn how to say no to temptations, to some nasty habits. You have to learn how to say no to some of the things that you like in life. Because by saying yes to all those things, you've gotten the outcome that you currently have right now. It's up to you. Do you want to change it? You have to learn how to say no. Some people, and I'll give you this, if you're a person that knows you have a hard time saying no, your homework assignment is this. 3 times this upcoming week, right? When someone makes a request to you, when someone asks you to do something, tell them no. But you can't explain why you said it. You can't justify, you can't rationalize, just say no. And I promise you're going to feel something. You're probably, if that's not what you normally do, you're going to worry what the person thought about you. You're going to be filled with a feeling of guilt. And some of you that really have a hard time with this are also going to be filled with shame. You're going to start to feel shame. So, and then you got to talk about those feelings with someone that a counselor, a therapist, a sponsor, a friend, someone that you can get into that conversation with them. So it's very powerful to be able to say no. Very, very, very powerful to say no. There's a quote by Warren Buffett that I really like. Okay. What is that quote by Warren Buffett? Well, here it is. Warren Buffett says the difference between successful people and very successful people is that very successful people have learned how to say no to almost everything. Okay? So, maybe he's talking about the word in the world of success in finances, but I highly doubt it. So the difference between successful people and very successful people is that very successful people have learned how to say no to almost everything. And if you're wondering why, maybe there's something to it. And I strongly encourage that you practice that today. And there is some value, by the way, in saying yes to things too. So I don't want to overgeneralize this statement. Now, when you have made changes in your life, right? When you've made changes in your health, your wealth, your finances, and all that kind of stuff like that, and you've created a space of abundance for yourself, and you've created freedom of choice for yourself, and someone makes a request to you, you can absolutely make a choice in that moment and say, yes, of course I'll help you. Yes, I'll be there for you. Yes, I'll support you. Yes, I'll take on that project. Yes, I'll do that, right? However, when you're barely in survival mode and you can't even keep your head out of the water to take a breath, and you are trying to make changes in your life, by doing that, every time you say yes to somebody else, you're saying no to yourself. And you got to ask yourself, can I do that? Can I do that? And it's a cost payoff analysis thing. There's a balance to all things in life. Life is always about learning the balance of things. And so there's some power to that. Now the G, there's 3 of them for the G. We're almost through here. The first one is goals. So I just shared with you 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, I have a talk called The 6 Steps for Riches. And it's how to get anything you want in life, right? How to set goals, defined goals to get anything you want in life. And the premise of that is from the book Think and Grow Rich. I made a strong recommendation for y'all to go get it. And this can happen in your recovery world. It can happen in your personal life, your professional life. It can happen in your health, mental health, physical health, in your relationships. But some of the basic concepts of that is when you are making a goal, it has to be so clear, so defined, crystal clear, to the point that you know when you've achieved it. You know when you have achieved your goal. And it has to be measurable. If you can't measure your goal, you cannot manage your goal. If you can't manage your goal, if you can't manage change, how are you ever going to know if you succeeded? So you have to be able to measure it. And as somebody that works with a lot of human beings that are trying to make changes in their life, if I ask you, hey, what are your goals for today? What are your goals for this week? And what are your goals for this month? And maybe even what are your goals for this year? If they don't have true answers for those that are written down and they're specific and they're measurable, for me, I know that's a person that's not going to make any changes. Maybe they'll make a few changes that aren't that meaningful to them, but they won't make the changes they want to make. Because, if you ever watch one of those old school Top Gun movies, Tom Cruise is in the airplane and they're flying, and when there's two F-16 fighter jets going after each other, we see that in the movies. The one that's behind, whenever it locks its target on the plane in the front, no matter what the plane in the front does, as soon as he hits the button, it's going to shoot and it's going to hit the target, right? No matter what it does, it's locked in. Now, in life, we are the person in the F-16 jet and we're flying through life. Some people wonder why they never hit their targets, why they never hit the goals. It's because they've never locked in on anything. When you have written goals for your day, when you have written goals for your week, for your month, for your year, you are locking in on things that you start to pursue and change and follow on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly basis, yearly basis. And sometimes when we're locked in, if we repeat that process over and over again, when we wake up in the morning, our subconscious mind takes our actions in that direction. We just naturally gravitate towards the direction of our well-defined targets that we've established. So please, if you are trying to make changes in life, don't start with the change, start with the goal setting first, and go watch that video on the 6 Steps to Riches. I talk about the importance of creating a blueprint in life. A blueprint means to finish something before you start it. Think about the structure that I'm sitting in right now, these walls, the windows, the flooring, all that kind of stuff like that. Before they ever hit dirt, broke ground and started building, somebody in their office somewhere drew the entire design out on something called a blueprint. Then they started building, and this is the end result. Your goal, what you're trying to change in life is the same way. First, draw the blueprint. Create your well-written, established goals. Make sure they're measurable. Follow the guidelines in my previous video. And then start taking the actions. Because if you just start taking the actions, you're eventually going to get discouraged, you're going to get lost, and you're going to make a U-turn and go back to where you came from, which is the life before your goals. So the next one for G is the word generosity. Give as much as you can, whenever you can. And it is a powerful, powerful, powerful way to keep the motivation going when you're making changes. So in the recovery world, we always say you can only keep it if you give it away. And what that means is this: if you're a mom and dad watching this, and your loved one has been clean and sober for a little bit of time, okay? So your loved one's been clean and sober for a little bit of time, and you're watching this. Do you know that there are other mom and dads watching this same video right now that have never gone through the recovery process? They're terrified, they're scared, they're worried, they don't know what to do, they don't know what's next. And your experience, strength, and hope in the recovery process can give them something that they cannot find on the internet, they cannot find anywhere else, they can't buy it. It's something that's really valuable. And through the act of generosity, when you start to share that with them, you say, hey, I've been there. Do you have a few minutes? Let's talk. Let me help you get through this. Let me connect you to a few people. That generosity not only helps them, but it gives you the energy, to continue going, to continue your path of progress and change. Same thing happens in recovery. This happens everywhere in life. Is do you make time to be generous, right? Do you give of yourself? And some people say, well, I might not have anything to give. Now, I'm not talking about money. Some of the most valuable things we can give to other people can't be measured in dollars and cents. I was telling this to the program participants. If you've been sober for a few months and there's a new guy or new girl that comes into the sober living that's terrified, that's never left home before, if you don't walk up to him and say, hey, my name is so-and-so, you're welcome here. What are some things that you like to do? These are some things that we like to do. This is this person. Here's my phone number. Let me help you get through this. I'm going to check back with you tomorrow. that is a valuable resource of generosity, of giving someone something that they don't have and they desperately need, right? Most truly successful people, I'm not talking about rich people, just successful people, people that you look at them and they're just internally happy. One of their common characteristics is they're generous, man. They give. And the last one for the G is gratitude. So I said it kind of weird for whatever reason, because it's so played out and cliche, but it is the foundation of making changes, right? If you focus on what you have, you will always have enough. If you focus on what you don't have, you'll never have enough. Are you grateful for the little small changes that you're creating across the way? Are you grateful for having the initial ability, the health, the mental health, even the mindset, the desire to change, right? Gratitude that's not expressed does not exist. So if you don't express your gratitude for the little things and the big things in your life, you're going to come across some barriers, some challenges that you're not going to be able to overcome. You're going to lose sight of the big picture. Gratitude helps us stay focused on the big picture. Because what does life do? It gets us lost and confused into the day-to-day. Gratitude kind of like zooms out and looks at things from a 360-degree bird's eye view. And it lets us see the total picture, the big picture. So if you're trying to make changes in your life and you realize that you're losing sight of gratitude, make it a habit, make it a goal to incorporate gratitude in your daily life. And if that's not something you naturally do, make it a habit that every morning when you wake up, or when you're going from your car to your, wherever you're going to on a little 5-minute walk, or you're going, you're exercising at the end when you're stretching, or when you're going to bed at night, to welcome in gratitude into your life, because it will give you the psychological and emotional muscles to be able to get more resilient. That's a good word for it. It increases our resiliency in life, right? And gratitude, when you share it with other people, by the way, it magnifies. I mean, get on a text message thread with 3 or 5 of your closest friends, and every single day share 3 things that you're grateful for with those people, and see what happens out of that. First of all, I promise you there'll be more people joining that group. That always happens, because the people in that group start sharing about the power of that group. And second of all, it just feels good to be connected and consciously including that into your life. And the E of change, so we went through the C, the H, the A, the N, the G, and the E, is the word every day. If you are trying to make changes in your life, you must, it's not a suggestion, you must take actions that are aligned with and in the direction of what it is you want to change in life every single day. It's not 2 days on, 3 days off. It's not 4 days of progress, 2 days, 3 days of rest. Every single day, are you taking actions that are aligned with and in the direction of your stated goals? You know what it is you want to change? Because if you're not, I'll tell you this, you won't get it. That change you're trying to make happen will not happen. Because if you're saying, I want to go over here, but your actions are going over here, will you ever get there? And the answer is no. For example, if I'm in California, I'm sorry to simplify this so much. If I'm in California and I want to go to New York and I get in my car and drive directly north, will I ever get to New York? The answer is no. Now, some people, they're over here, they want to get here, but their actions go completely opposite of their destination. And they wonder, why can't I ever get the goals I want in life? Well, there it is. And we have to do it every day. So I know it sounds pretty intense to say no days off, but that mentality, right? That mentality of no days off, there's some power in it. And by the way, I am also a high school basketball coach. So these things that I'm sharing with you right now, I preach on a regular basis and I teach on a regular basis. So if you are trying to make some changes in 2021, I want you to go over the list. In the description of this video, you're going to find all the ingredients that we shared about. And go over that list. And every single time you come across a barrier, a challenge, and you want to change, recourse and go back to what was familiar, I want you to make a commitment to look and see which one of those ingredients you are actually missing, losing, that you need to focus on, that you need to include, that you need to add, because the answer is always there. I've talked to so many people that have said they want to make changes, but they failed to do so. And when we do a little deep dive, when we do a root cause analysis, when we find out why that happened, I've seen that one, some, or all of those ingredients were missing. So how bad do you want it? How bad do you want to make these changes? Are you willing to use the ingredients we just talked about in this video? If so, I look forward to hearing from you, sharing back and bragging back and talking back about the changes that you made in your life. And yeah, absolutely, Nick. No days off, man. This one helps the most. It's a powerful thing. And all that being said, this being the last talk of 2020, when 2020 started, I did not think that this was the year this would all it would look like this. But here we are, and that's okay. My hope is that you've learned things about yourself, about others, about society, about life that you otherwise wouldn't have learned this year. My hope is that you started to value things in life, about others, about self, that you wouldn't have valued prior to this year, and that it's created a new way of engaging with life in the world as we know it right now. So remain teachable, remain adaptable, have a safe and happy New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. I will be back here next Saturday for the first talk of 2021, getting back in the weeds of family education and support, and really talking about the recovery component of things. So I look forward to having some or all of you back. And again, all these videos are recorded. They're on our Facebook page. Feel free to share them with whoever you want, however you want. Spread the love and spread the joy. Love and appreciate all of you. Thank you for having me a part of your world. And till next week, have a good one, man. See you guys next year. I always wanted to say that.